And so that actually leads back into what I was saying with the kind of directorialism, is that someone like Jeff Koons is where he is, not because of the money that his work generates, but because he started out as a stockbroker and he had money to work with. And a lot of artists out there who are big names are real estate moguls, like on the down low.
Welcome to What's My Thesis. I'm Javier Proenza, and today my guest is Faris McReynolds, which is like an 80s movie John Hughes character name, no? It's
I
so
have had
specific.
People comment on my name before. Yeah. I don't hear my name a lot, to be honest, but I was in the grocery store the other day and I heard this woman yell my name and I froze. And
The first name?
Yeah, and I froze. And then this little boy was like, "Mom, I'm coming." Took the edge off.
And then you were like, oh man, I remember the struggles that kid's going to go through with that name.
He's going to get it. He's going to get it.
All the Gen Xers are going to be like, Faris.
Well, there was a moment, because things kind of take, like when something is retro or old, it sort of slides downhill and then it hits this kind of like nadir and then it like comes back. There was a period where nobody knew what Ferris Bueller was.
Really?
People had completely forgotten about it, like early aughts.
Oh, they forgot about it. Yeah.
Early aughts, they were either too young or it was just kind of like not old enough to be cool. And then it came back like full force and it's just like, okay, so here we are again.
All right, we've addressed the name.
We've addressed the name.
I've done my due diligence. Well, cool, man. So you were introduced to me by a patron of the show, Nick Lowe.
Yeah,
who you
very
say
good artist, yeah.
Very good artist, and who you've known a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And when I reached out to you, I got a little confused because you were like, "Oh, I'm not in the art world anymore." I didn't realize that you meant that you were not actively in the business or the hustle of the art world, which I totally understand retiring from, but that you still make art. So let's do because I want to get into your art, your experience. You said you had 15 years of experience in the business. The business. What do you give us a little tease of what the business, and then we'll get back into we're foreshadowing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. So when I got out of, I was in art school in the 90s, and I started selling a little bit of work to some of my teachers while I was in school. And by the time I got out of school, I had some exposure to galleries. And out here in LA, yeah, I went to Otis.
Okay.
And and I would say that, I still try to really keep up with the people I went to school with, even though it's been a long time, just on Instagram and stuff. But out of that, I kind of, I had a project space that I ran with a couple of other artists from school, a guy named Lee Clark who moved to Florida and another guy who just disappeared off the face of the earth. And it happens.
You just lost touch with?
No, he vanished in the night and left me holding the bag with a bunch of fines that we got from the fire department.
Oh, it was like that.
And so it was just kind of like, see
he doesn't want to be found.
He didn't want to be found. And so, that was kind of my entryway. Having this project space was my entryway, maybe not unlike this podcast, to get, just to kind of like get involved with things and to kind of like connect with other people and meet a few collectors. And we sold some work out of there, but ultimately I met a lot of people that ended up helping me down the line. And I would say pretty much within a couple of years of being out of school, I was more or less living off my work.
Oh, cool.
And I'd be happy at some point too to address what that actually looks like for people.
To
take some of the
I always like to
shine off of that.
I appreciate that intro. We'll get back into that.
Yeah.
I want to get a sense of you as an artist. I have a very basic intro question, which is tell me what your first memories of making art are.
Okay.
That you're like, oh shit, it makes sense where I follow the lineage.
Absolutely.
And then the moment you realize. I used to frame it as a burden, but some people never had that moment. They were always cool with taking the title artist and weren't overwhelmed by the weight of it. So whichever one it was for you, take me through that whole journey.
Sure. I think somewhere around first grade, somewhere around there, I used to have to go to, my sister and I would have to go to India. I'm half Indian, half American.
Okay.
My sister
your
and I
name hides your heritage.
I mean, don't ask about the middle name.
What is the middle name?
I have two, Ahmed and Liam. So it's, a lot of
there's a lot there's a lot of territory being claimed by what is Mook? Scottish or
Scottish,
okay, and Mac is Irish.
I don't know, to be
Okay.
honest. I'm Scottish and Irish and Scandinavian on the white side. A lot of Norway. I'm gonna just go around this real quick. Grab this and then I'll come back. Sorry, you can edit that out. It'll be a hard cut right there. So I have a very distinct memory when I was maybe about somewhere between 5 and 7 of hearing this song, "Steppin' Out" by Joe Jackson, and the song "Good Vibrations" by the Beach Boys, and hearing those songs, knowing that I was a musician. I didn't really know what that meant, but the way that the certain chords and notes and kind of like interval changes hit me as a little kid, I was like, this means something to me, and like, I don't know what that is, but I'm going to find out. And with art, it was almost more like other people telling me that I was an artist. I really got to give it up for my my art teachers all the way through grade school to high school. I think somewhere around 5th grade, my art teacher kind of like pulled me aside and was like, "I'm going to let you do whatever you want. And I'm also going to like enter your work into these like national contests." I never won anything, but I was like, okay, maybe there's something there too, And the interesting part of that though is that I never really, maybe it's ADHD or just, general just malaise of being a kid, but I never really engaged with any of this stuff in school.
Yeah.
And I tried out for choir in elementary school and didn't make it. And still mad about that.
I you just triggered a memory of me. I was too old and my voice was not high enough, and I was upset that I didn't get into a choir.
But that's what ultimately drives people, I think, is you have a knowledge of yourself doing this thing, and this other person who doesn't know you is like, that's not going to work for me. So again, so somewhere around like 1st grade or so is when I knew I was kind of doing both. There's a piece of paper that my parents gave me eventually that I made in 3rd grade. And it was one of these things where the teacher gives you like a form and it says your name and like your favorite color, what's your friend's name, and what do you want to be when you grow up? And I wrote artist. And I don't remember wanting to be an artist in 3rd grade, but apparently I wanted to be an artist in 3rd grade.
Wow.
I still have that piece of paper. So it's just been with me my whole life, and you mentioned the word burden. I don't really think it felt like a burden until...
it did click as a burden though.
Well, it did click as a burden, but that was more like after I was up to my eyeballs in the business, and I couldn't do math that made what I was living and experiencing work, and that's a whole other conversation.
What do you mean by that? Expand on that.
There's a lot of...
You're talking philosophical math?
No, just the actual math, like the
economics,
the hard economics of it, where it's like I'm doing, 2, sometimes 3 shows a year, selling the majority of the work in these shows, and I'm in debt, and I can't get out of that. And I don't have a fancy lifestyle. I drove like my mom's old Toyota or whatever.
How did you end up in debt? You just couldn't...
Just the cost of everything, So I'll give you an example. I'll try to use these aren't like real numbers. Just I'll use a variable of 10 so that's easy. Let's say you have, let's say you've made some connections and you get a show with a gallery, right? And they're like, we'll do the show in a year. And in that year, you're able to make 10 pieces, whatever they are. And let's say they all retail through the gallery for $10,000, right? So on paper and to the outside world, I mean, that's not what the numbers were that I was dealing with. On paper to the outside world, that looks like, okay, wow, this person's like in the money. That's $100,000. Like they sold everything to the show. But it's like, okay, well, let's say that I had managed to make all of my overhead for everything in my life, including my art supplies and everything, like max out at $3,000 a month, right?
Yeah.
So for the year, that cost me $36,000, right? If they sold everything in that show, 50-50, I get $50,000 from that. The government takes 30%. That leaves me with $35,000. I'm in the whole $1,000.
Yeah.
And so it's like you can just...
It accumulates.
The more you spend, the more you make, the more you have to spend. Because, once you're selling work for a certain price, like the people who come in to buy the work, they want to know that I'm going to get fucking killed for saying this shit. They want to know they're giving money to another rich person. They don't do charity, and, it's like...
Or a budding rich person, maybe?
Or someone who has the same priorities, let's say, as them. And what those priorities look like are an art studio full of assistants.
Yeah.
And I'm somebody who always worked alone, and I will always work alone. And I like to be the person who makes the things that I make. And I understand why people do the kind of directorial thing. It's not for me, but I'm just too much of a control
I've
freak.
never heard it called directorial.
I think that there's
that makes sense.
There's a whole genre of art that I see as directorialism, really.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to name names. I kept telling myself, like last night, like don't
trash
name
people.
Names, don't trash anybody.
No, I don't need you to do that. This is all already pretty juicy.
Sure, but there are artists that are well known. Look, okay, I'll say Jeff Koons. I don't know the guy, so he's not.
I mean, he's an easy target.
He's an easy target, right? He's in the Epstein
Did
files.
you ever know him?
No.
Wait. Whoa, oh my God.
He's in the Epstein files. But I did own a Jeff Koons, and I sold a Jeff Koons for an enormous markup.
Oh wow.
That was part of how I made my money. Also, was
so you indirectly made money off of traffic. No,
no, absolutely. I absolutely did. I made money off of the Epstein circle.
Well, what was he in there for? I mean, I can't let that go.
He claims that he went to a party and didn't have any other contact with him.
Okay,
I don't know.
I mean, he would be one. He would end up in that situation just based on.
His aspirations would put him there for sure.
Yeah.
Right. And he's from finance, and that's his whole kind of thing. And so,
is that for real? I didn't know that.
That's why. And so that actually leads back into what I was saying with the kind of directorialism, is that someone like Jeff Koons is where he is, not because of the money that his work generates, but because he started out as a stockbroker and he had money to work with. And a lot of artists out there who are big names are real estate moguls, like on the down low.
Yeah.
And that's like a very real thing. And so it's like, their investment in sales is not the same as someone like myself, where I actually needed the money to balance the books, to pay for my life, to pay for the work and all that stuff. And so like in the example I gave you where I come out in the hole, if somebody already has money, if they're a little bit in the hole, it's okay. They can keep going. I eventually did a show where somebody was really upset with the work that I made because there was violence and nudity and this other kind of stuff that they apparently weren't on board with. I didn't know that going in, but
this was were you showing at a space, or was this?
No, this was at a mega gallery, and then
and the gallerist was not happy,
and they didn't offer the work out to anybody because I sort of found out, like, they were like, no one's interested, nobody wants to buy this, because they were kind of trying to get me to stop doing that. And I knew a lot of the collectors that should have been on their kind of list of who gets this work or gets offered this work, and I asked around, and nobody was even offered the work, and so I was just kind of like, I think it's time for me to go. Was that the official retirement of? Well, no, but that started a financial downward spiral for me, because I needed to recoup at that time something about like $40,000 to just break even, and I didn't sell anything, so I got into this kind of debt spiral that I couldn't get out of.
Wow, okay.
It really made me question what I was doing, and some of the people at the time that I would be sort of forced to have dinner with and things like that were questionable. And now that this Epstein thing exists, it's very easy to contextualize that. But for a long time, people would just be like, what, do you just hate rich people? I mean, it's not about that. It really isn't about how much money you have. It's about like what your allegiances are to, right?
Yeah.
And the Epstein thing has shown that there is a class of wealth where there's this kind of like horizontal reach, that it's just about money. And it doesn't matter what your religion or your culture or your region or any of that stuff, democracy, authoritarianism, none of that stuff matters. It's just, are you rich, right? And, now that, I recently read some like Breathless thing, and I think it was ArtNet or Art Forum. I can't really tell these things apart anymore, but it was something about how like the goal now of these art fairs is to attract and pursue sovereign wealth. And I just thought about how like, well, that's the same thing ultimately that crypto is doing right now, and the same thing that the tech industry is doing with AI, all those guys. What's
sovereign wealth?
Sovereign wealth is state-owned wealth, or royalty. The wealth of royalty, or the wealth of a government, that's where they've taken the money from taxpayers or whatever, but it's essentially a state fund, let's call it. And
so like the same way that they're saying that AI is going to have to be bailed out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like, you can track a lot of these kind of scammy cultures to where they off-ramp their scam essentially with government money, pursuing government money. And that's like what we're seeing now with the whole kind of Art Basel fiefdom. So when I was really active, Art Basel wasn't really part of the picture. And as it became more and more part of the picture, it's sort of like, a gun to the head of gallerists, where they have to spend more money in order to be, relevant, in order to like participate. And it makes to where the situation we have now, where all these galleries have closed, all these people have lost interest. There's a lot of people who have just said, I don't care anymore, on the gallerist level. And it's partly because the conversation is just primarily about this kind of elite class that reaches out horizontally above society, above region, above any kind of political affiliation. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat, or at the end of the day.
Oh yeah, those things
wealth.
don't exist at all.
No, and a certain strata of wealth, they don't exist at all. And so I was having these experiences around the time that I was in this debt spiral where I distinctly remember having dinner with this guy in another country. I won't go into more detail than that. But I was like, I'm pretty sure he was just talking to me about his life, like kind of like, breathlessly talking to me about his life and his collection and all this stuff. And part of me was like, well, I'm glad that this work goes into a collection with someone who cares. But part of me was also like, I'm pretty sure that your grandparents were doing the slave trade based on where we were, what we kind of mixed up in the country and the origins. And I was just kind of like thinking about India also. And this person was Dutch. I'll just say that much. The relationship that there is with India.
Oh, you mean the famous slave trade?
Yes, the first original slave trade. Yeah. And, that stuff hit India too. And so I started having a real kind of existential crisis where I'd already been sort of suffering through this thing where I'm dealing with a lot of people who really don't know the difference between like the underground and unsuccessful, and I think for musicians, that's like an obvious conversation. Like every musician can list, pop music that they like, but they can also list like things that no one has ever heard of that they're super into, right? Because everyone has like their niche or whatever, where it's like, maybe it's like heavy metal or maybe it's like reggaeton. It doesn't matter, but you'll have a niche where it's like, not everyone's going to have heard of this, but it's still valid. In art, it was kind of like an all or nothing. It's almost like the talent show mentality of like American Idol or like Hell's Kitchen or some kind of like thing where people put their thing up on the thing and a kind of gavel goes down. It says like you passed or failed.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it operates on a certain level, or it did for me in the art business. And I burned out, I started asking myself, who is this for? What am I doing? And then I was looking at my debt and just kind of being like, I think I'm going to go in another direction with my life, and it's not going to be easy. But I think I have to do this. And so, I'd been showing, I think my first show was probably in 1999. And I think,
that was out of college?
That was when I was still in school.
Okay.
And,
cause you don't look that much older than me, but I graduated in 98.
Okay. How old are you? Can I ask?
I'm 45.
Okay. I'm 48. I'll be 49 this year. Yeah. So yeah, we're basically the same age. Yeah. I started selling work to some of my teachers, and some of my other teachers would be like, I know someone curating a show, because did you
do
invested.
an MFA?
No.
So you didn't even need that back then?
I didn't want it. I had the luxury of going to an arts magnet in high school. I don't know how this existed in Texas where I grew up, because Texas is kind of like an extremely conservative place where there's, there is support for the arts, but it's kind of like in the very blue chip world.
Yeah.
That said, the Dallas Museum of Art and Fort Worth museums, there's a bunch of museums in Fort Worth, were instrumental in my upbringing. And, but anyway, I went to an arts magnet in high school, and I was exposed to conceptual art really young. I was like a teenager in high school, and I knew about, Fluxus, and I knew about like the New York 80s stuff and Basquiat and all that stuff. And so by the time I got to art school, I was pretty like tired of talking about art, and I just wanted to make art. Mm. And so I also kind of made an assessment and looked around, and the big names in the art market at the time I was getting out of school were people like Damien Hirst, Matthew Barney, Jeff Koons. None of these people have an MFA.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of put two and two together and was like, if I go farther in debt with this system, then I ultimately have to defend this system. I don't really feel invested in this system, and I'd rather just take that same money or, leverage my credit card to do whatever to go have a project space.
Yeah.
And just get involved, And I also worked at galleries in those days right after school. The art handling industry wasn't like a thing like it is now, where you've got these like, these
careers,
massive careers, right? Where people are just like, this is what I do. It was kind of like, I can sit at a gallery and answer the phone, but I can also hang that up.
Yeah.
And, do random things. Like I would like put a de Kooning in the back of my Toyota and like drive it to some collector's house. Like that kind of stuff doesn't happen anymore. And it shouldn't have happened probably in the first place.
I've done that as well.
Yeah. And so, you
go to a condo and you're like, what?
Well, there was this one collector who had an incredible collection. This guy, Leon Banks. I don't know if he's still alive. And I drove the de Kooning to his house. I don't know if I should be saying all this stuff, but he showed me around his collection, and he had incredible work from David Hockney, Lyle Ashton Harris, all kinds of stuff. And he had the best view of LA from his house that I've ever seen.
Wow. Yeah.
And that was in Baldwin Hills, I think, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, I digress.
I mean, that's humbling though.
There was a different collector base back then. You know? I think that when I was getting into all of this, I was really drawn to the idea that there were people who collected as collectors. You know, I mean, the flipper thing really took over somewhere around like 2010, right? Like,
what do you mean flipper thing? Like flipping art?
Yeah, like the sort of Simkowitz model of like, you know, you drive up prices as fast as you can for emerging artists and kind of play these games with auction houses and with charity auctions and sort of like fudge numbers around until you can get things as high as you can. And then everybody like jumps out with like a parachute at some point. And, you know, the truth is in these situations, I don't think the artists make a lot of money. Around the time I was having my existential crisis before I left one of the big galleries I was showing with, I was introduced to one of these people.
One of these artists or?
No, one of these kind of flippers. And so the way that they operate, a lot of them, is they have real estate. They have like phenomenal real estate of art studios. And they'll be in places like Vernon or City of Commerce or whatever. And these places are incredible and they're completely outside the reach of someone like you or me. And what they do is they'll give you the space to work in. And what they'll do in exchange is bring through the board of every museum. You know, again, the kind of like Epstein class thing. They'll bring these people through who would otherwise never come to your studio. And they put your name on the lips of all of these people and then they sell all the work. The catch is they generally want work in exchange. Because when I met with one of these
guys, they don't want you to eat a baby.
I mean, you might have to eat your own baby at some point. But I met with one of these people and that was kind of instrumental in deciding that I was done here. Because I had already spent a decade at that point, like kind of grinding away, showing everywhere that I could and really selling a lot of work and making relationships with collectors and felt like that I was part of some kind of broader community. But then after all that, I was introduced to this guy whose name I will not say. He's a lawyer and a real estate developer. And he keeps a very low profile. And he's not one of these people that people talk about, but he is.
Is he in the files?
Probably. I would not be surprised if this person is in the files 400
So
times.
That level of elite, we're not, even though we're not saying his name, we're not asserting that he definitely is.
Can't say one way or the other.
I'm just like allegedly everywhere.
I tried Googling him once and I found one picture of him at an opening and just thought, this guy has done an incredible job of being invisible. But so someone gave me his number. I called him up and it was a very cagey and weird conversation. And I'm someone who's been around the block, you know. I mean, I grew up in the like crust punk world, and I've experienced a lot of violence and stuff just growing up in Texas and being, you know, Muslim Indian guy or whatever, and just, you know, I'm no stranger to when something is off.
Yeah.
And so I knew immediately something was off with this guy, and I kept talking to him and saying, well, what do you want in exchange for the studio space? Like, you've told me how you have the nicest studios in LA and how you've made this person and this person, but what do you want from me? And he refused to say.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, so you're going to take the work I make and I'm going to walk away with nothing at the end of this, right? And he refused to kind of like say yes or no on that. And then he got really mad at me and he started being like, I thought you wanted to make it. I thought, you know, so-and-so told me that you know, had what it took and that you want to be a star. And I just died laughing because that's like a Paul Giamatti character outburst, you know, like one of these, it's like, you know, getting yelled at by Jerry Heller or something, you know. And I just started laughing and he was like, are you laughing at me? And I was like, yeah, man. And he just hung up the phone. And I was like, okay, I think I'm done here. Like, wow. I think I'm done. I'm never going to stop making art. But this network of distribution that I've like put my work into and kind of like my life into, for me is over.
Yeah.
And I think about that a lot. I think about the network of distribution that you put your work into defines what your work is. It defines how it's seen. It defines the value that's put on your work. And ultimately it defines where the work ends up. Mm-hmm. You know, and for some people that's like a Freeport in Delaware, and other people it's the wall of a museum, and other people it's in their dealer's basement where they're just like hiding things. And in other people it's in the homes of people who buy, make, and collect art.
Yeah.
You know, and I realized that by having kind of blindly climbed the ladder up to a certain point that I was maybe in the wrong network of distribution for myself.
So you feel like there were other options, but you just ended up. So you think it's
like there were no options.
No, but I'm saying like the way you phrase that, and I just want to make sure you're not saying this because it doesn't now it sounds like you're not, but the way you said that made it sound like you were thinking, oh, if I had started off, if I could go back in time and take a different path, there might have been a path, but it doesn't sound like that's what you were saying.
No,
okay.
I think
because that's what I heard. Okay,
sure. No, the world was changing, and things were changing very quickly, and Art Basel was kind of getting a stranglehold on the whole conversation.
Do you know when the first one was? I mean, it's okay if you don't.
No,
but
I
early
can
90s?
tell you. Do you know what the origins of Art Basel are?
No.
So Ernst Violet, I'm gonna like end up in the river face down after this. The guy who started Art Basel worked directly with the Third Reich.
Okay.
Back in the day, and he would
because that was the Basel's in Switzerland, so that makes sense.
They were neutral. They were neutral. You know, we're just neutral. We're just observers. Anyways. The guy who started Art Basel, you can look this up. There's one Guardian article. I mean, it'll be wiped from history eventually, but there's one Guardian article from 2001, I think, that talks about this. Because I don't remember the artist, but the estate of one of the artists that he bought work from the Third Reich and then, used this to build a fortune to start Art Basel. The descendants, the heirs of this artist, they wanted, reparations, and he refused flatly. Mm-hmm. Alazitsky, someone like that, or I can't remember who. But that Basel thing has been around for a while. But then it kind of grew into this kind of like corporatized like trade show thing. I would say somewhere around like 2005, 2006 is to where I couldn't stop hearing about it. But by 2008, it was kind of like more important than doing a show, where it would be like, well, we're going to take this painting to Basel. And I personally, you cannot pay me to go to one of these things. I've been to the Armory once, and I've been to Frieze once.
Frieze is so much more manageable than, or at least that space is so small.
There's just something about the energy at these things that is very trade show. It's almost like we could be. It's
like the LA car show.
Yeah, or like we're like. This is like plumbing gear, and it's we have the latest like toilet flusher.
And it's not conducive to art. Like I saw my first Gursky at Basel, and I was like, this is not how to look at this.
Or is it really? Yeah, but I know what you mean. Yeah, and it's really hard to look at art in any kind of meaningful way at one of these fairs.
Yeah.
And so the fairs that I was in, I didn't go to, and I think around the fairs became this kind of like celebrity culture. But then once Instagram kind of caught traction, it turned the fairs into this thing where it's a very like conspicuous way to like participate in art. You just show up and be seen there. And that kind of metastasized into this whole other thing. But around the time I got out, like around 2010 was like, I don't think I can do this anymore.
Yeah.
But I had made commitments years in advance because I always tried to just keep my calendar full. Mm-hmm. Anyone who wanted to do something, as long as they seemed legit, I would just say yes. And so I was kind of booked out through 2013. Mm-hmm. But I was like, I'm not going to like play the game anymore at this point because I have a very wide-ranging practice and I work in every conceivable media. But what works for the art market really is painting, sculpture to some extent, but generally it's painting. And so if you're an artist who works in a lot of different kinds of media and you make painting, it'll not uncommon for galleries to just be like, why don't we focus on this?
Yeah.
And at first it felt very kind of benign, but after a while it was like pretty clear where it was just like, we're going to pretend that all this other shit doesn't exist. I had my own kind of existential crisis with that, mixed in with like, who am I doing this for? Like this kind of Epstein class. Like I actually care about democracy and I care about the world that I live in. And, I heard someone recently on the radio talking about horizontal affiliations versus vertical affiliations. And I feel like I'm someone who has more vertical affiliations, which is to say I'm connected to the place I live. I'm just a guy who lives in LA. Mm-hmm. And I'm connected to the arts community that I've kind of known through the years of living, the decades of living here. And I'm not really particularly interested in what happens in Abu Dhabi. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And while that's fine, that's valid for if that's your thing, that doesn't have anything to do with my life. And
when was the last time you went to an opening?
God, that is a good question. I had my own opening. I did 2 shows in 2024.
Okay.
So to speak to like what we originally were talking about, where it's like you were like, or did you quit Did you not?
Dude,
correct?
I'm gonna get staying the fuck out of the way. You go ahead.
No, it's fine.
You're spitting fire and I don't even know the questions to ask. You know, like,
I'm not here to dominate.
no, this is the whole point of the podcast. Look, I'm on here every fucking week. I can say things that people have already heard.
Sure. Okay. Fair enough, but feel free to stop me at any point.
No, dude, like, honestly, like I would not, if I had to extract that from you, I wouldn't know how to ask you about this stuff because I don't see I don't have that worldview. So yeah. Don't stop.
And, I do worry a little bit that someone watching this who's never heard of me, which is basically everybody, because I went away before social media, I feel like they're going to be like, all this guy cares about is money or the business. And that's absolutely not true.
I don't think that's not the sense I'm
have
getting.
these experiences. And since I don't have skin in the game, I'm more than willing to talk about it. I think there's a lot. It sounds
more to me like you're upset that money is such a central part of it, and like it sounds to me like you felt trapped by money, and also that you were losing money and making money for other people.
The latter was really the part that hit me the most, because part of asking myself who is this for was accepting that ultimately if you go into this world of selling work in galleries and big galleries, I worked with some very big galleries, and ultimately, your story is not the thing here. You're working for this other person's story. Some of these people have an ego that would make Caligula blush.
Well, if a lot of them are in real estate, I mean.
Well, some of the artists are shockingly not your friends.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and, I've learned that already. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not without even knowing.
No. And then once you're actually like sort of like tasked with going to dinner with them, sometimes more than once, it became for me really difficult to sit through it. And
pretend that they're not eating babies.
Well, or just pretend.
I wonder how many references to that I can make before YouTube.
Well, now I'm wondering how many times I've been served baby. I'm like, some of these restaurants I've been to.
Anytime you ate pork, apparently they can slip that in, or chicken.
The good news is I don't eat meat, but
okay.
No, but there's been times where I've eaten fish and other things like that at a restaurant just to be like, you only live once or whatever. But
I thought you were gonna say I play ball with these rich folk.
But like some of the artists that disappointed me, let's say, I was shocked, because in their sort of presence in the world, you would never suspect. You would never suspect that this person is operating on the level that they're operating on.
I would not be surprised. Just to clarify the space that we're in, because my new favorite question to ask people, but I'm not going to do that to you on air, is my new favorite question, which is not necessarily relevant to this conversation, but only tangentially. Your answer's not relevant. Is what's the craziest thing you believe now?
I saw this in your stories. Now that the Epstein files were real, what's the craziest thing you believe in? And I was like, God, I'm not sure.
No one answered. Not one person answered.
I think
if you can tie it to art, that'd even be great. Yeah.
I think the real takeaway from all this for me is that most of what people have believed is true, right? Yeah. On some level. And so a lot of these conspiracies, they're founded in a lot of bullshit, but there's some kernel of truth in a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I'm not really like a conspiracy guy, but I have had one eyebrow raised at a certain class of people kind of my whole life. Like you can't come up in the punk world and not, and
there's definitely some sociopathic tendencies that are projected outwardly in a very aggressive sense.
Absolutely. And social media reinforces a lot of kind of normalized sociopathic behavior, in that, the affectation of something is more important than the thing itself, right? Like if let's say you were sad about something and you need to convey that on social media, you can't just take a selfie and be like, I'm sad. You have to break down in tears like a method actor. And there's some amount of sociopathic behavior that's woven in to all of this, right? And the idea of performing, being an artist, is like more important than actually like having a practice. And I've had a daily practice of art, to speak to what you were asking me earlier, this whole time. I've just stopped putting it into, I never wanted to be an artist on the internet. When I started out, I mean, when you were around in the 90s and stuff, like the internet had nothing on it.
No.
You'd go to a GeoCities site with like
text.
Spinning backgrounds and stuff.
The dancing baby from Ally McBeal was the fucking pinnacle. Which you remind me, just as a side, I have been watching old Conan O'Brien, and it takes me back to this like really like innocent primitive time, and
Yeah.
it keeps getting interrupted because all the fucking jokes are about Clinton. It's like still like you can't escape the Epstein files.
No, you can't. And I mean, it's funny because Clinton is just such a great example of like what's wrong with everything, because
And the impersonation is lost to time because they portray him as a hillbilly. He used to do this thing where it was like a TV screen and then just like the lips.
Yeah.
And that impersonation of him is like, oh, like why did that get lost?
Yeah.
It's like, wee-haw! And then you compare him to Bush, and Bush is like a different kind of.
Well, what's so funny about George W. Bush is like, he's a full-on war criminal, right?
Yeah.
Compared to what we're up against now, I mean, it's like, bring him back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Bring him back.
Well,
like,
the difference is that is that now Dick Cheney's the president instead of being the guy with the puppet. Yeah.
I mean, I think Dick Cheney would have had enough sense to know that you're not going to win another war in the Middle East.
I don't know. That's giving him a lot of credit.
I don't want to give him any credit because he's
rest in peace.
Certifiably a horrible person.
We're off topic. We're off topic. You have way more interesting things to say that we can talk about this later on. So do you want to talk about your practice at all? Because like this is an art podcast, and I do that, and it is on the internet though, and it would contextualize some of the things I'm saying. Yeah.
Because I'm someone who's very drawn to having a daily practice. I remember being a teenager and coming across a Gerhard Richter book about like the daily practice of painting, and just being like, and then looking at his work and just being like, well, yeah, this guy obviously knows something I don't know, but also. Coming from the DIY world, you kind of have to do a little bit of your thing every day in order to keep it going. Because if you don't, no one else is going to do it.
Yeah.
And
this shit comes to a grinding halt when I stop.
Yeah, no, and it's like if you take a vacation, just like everything falls apart, right? So it's like I was already kind of deep into that attitude and that mindset, and then I just started doing it. And what happened for me was that I would amass all of this work in a very short period of time, and it was kind of like life-changing because, or wasn't kind of, I mean, it was literally life-changing because once people came to my studio and they saw this work, they couldn't question my commitment, Some of it was very different than other things, but if there was something that they kind of like locked in on, there was enough of that to where they could like extract that from my practice and like put it up as a show.
Yeah.
And even to this day, I talk about network of distribution, like Instagram will never be my network of distribution. And there's a reason why, there's a lot of reasons why, but the main reason why is that it kind of races to this lowest common denominator to where art ends up being about this version of art that's for everyone. I don't believe that art is for everyone. I think that everyone's got like their niche interests. Some art is for everyone. Maybe the bean in Chicago or whatever is for everyone. I don't know. It's in everyone's space, whether they like it or not. But I think that there are people who like process. There are people who like color. There are people who like ideas. People who like theory. There's all these little things, and you can pull them all together and see a bigger picture. But each one of these little things is not for everyone.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can safely say I don't like the work of every guest I have here. Like I try because then it's just about my taste and not about like I have very niche interests. And so not that I think I definitely wouldn't have anyone whose work I think is like atrocious, but you know what I mean? It's like, it's just not my thing.
And I agree with that completely. And the word taste is, I think, really important because one of the things that Instagram does or has done is made art about taste.
Yeah.
And about signifying cultural affiliations through taste. And also through political displays and things like that, but mostly through taste. And I made a decision early on that I was not going to engage taste, all the way going back to a teenager.
Okay.
That I was not going to engage taste because taste is design within reach. Taste is a store on Rodeo Drive. Like these things exist within commerce everywhere. And you don't need that in art, in my mind. You need something that is willing to upend taste or completely just be ignorant of taste in pursuit of something else, One of the things that I struggle with social media is that so much of my work for a really long time was about this kind of disconnect in perception between the way something is presented to you, what it is that's being presented, and then how you receive it. And now we live in a world where everything is fake, everything is a con, everyone with fraud maxing or whatever. That is the status quo of being online. Like the most famous guitarists, I don't know how much you keep up with the stuff, but like all these people are frauds.
What the guy
the guys who mime, who speed up their song and mime, and
what's that guy's name?
Giacomo Tora.
No, the other, the Asian one that
yeah,
like that guy. Every time his stuff would come on, I would just not engage with it because first of all, it seemed really pretentious. And then secondly, I didn't like the music.
The music is dreadful. It's so bad.
And the fact that he's faking it.
Well, there was another guy who's bigger, more egregious.
Yeah, Giacomo.
Who stole the riffs that he was playing from lesser known YouTubers.
That he would do collabs with and shit.
Well, no, it's just some people he wouldn't even credit them.
Oh, yeah.
And he had no association with them. He would learn their riffs because they're just kind of jamming, doing their thing. Older guys and stuff, people with no real charisma for the format, right?
Yeah.
And bad lighting or whatever, and he would take all that stuff and do it in this bright, cheesy, kind of like the backward hat, the big smile, and this kind of like quasi-performative thing with other people who are all just kind of like hamming it up. And it was sort of like Paul Schaefer and the Tonight Show band. And it was so cringe and so awful, but he has like 50 billion followers.
Yeah.
And as a musician, I just think about all of the weird things that I like and what they mean to me, and just, I can't engage with that at all. But this kind of like fraudulent sort of fraud maxing thing is the norm.
Yeah.
And so for
everyone's their own PR company is how I say it, but fraud maxing is probably more accurate.
Well, I mean, everything is a maxing now, so let's just run with that. But like, I would do things where I would use a style, this was how my practice was constructed for a long time. I would use a style of painting to present an idea in a certain way, right? And I would make a body of work around that. And maybe it was like quasi-expressionist or quasi-impressionist. I say quasi because I was never painting my feelings. I was sometimes painting the idea of a feeling.
Yeah.
Or the idea of something being visceral and in your face and having this kind of immediacy. But it was never about like, this is my craft and I'm being pure and just everybody leave me alone so that I can like make a big mess.
That's a big fucking pet peeve of mine when artists get into that space.
And I think it's a death knell really of your practice if you do that, because one of the things that I really always focused on was like the way things land with complete strangers.
Yeah.
But in the realm of the social media feed, everything is kind of reduced to like craft and things like that. And I'm the kind of person, a little self-sabotagey, I won't even deny that. But like when I decided to leave, I wrote a couple blogs and asked them to take my work down because I didn't like the context. And
a couple blogs.
Yeah. And
that were writing about it or
they just
promoting
kind of put up, they just kind of like found stuff and put it up there or whatever. And like there was one where people vote, like Yelp, there was like 0 to 5 stars and they would just have a painting. And, it's like my painting had like 4 stars maybe or something. It was a good rating, but I was like, I'm not a part of the talent show world.
Yeah.
Those values really actually upset me and they kind of like demean everything. And also when I looked through the comments, people would say stuff like, I think I've seen this composition somewhere before. And I'm like, yeah, because it's fucking appropriated, man. And I don't expect everyone to know that. But if you read the press release for that show, you would know that is an appropriation.
Yeah.
And so for me to kind of have to like navigate that in the world full of people who are like extremely sincere and very literal about everything, I don't have the time and the energy to take that on.
That's all social media. I have like the comment section on anything. Like at first I would like get annoyed.
I get annoyed. I can't not get annoyed.
But dude, that's what like now, like, okay, I put out, I think one of my best performing clips is all people arguing about like, it's a clip about someone talking about their Hmong, which is like an ethnic group from Indonesia, and all the Indonesians are just arguing in the comments.
Sure.
And when it's like, and once that happened, I realized like, but like half of the shit is bots anyway. Like if anybody, and so now when someone says something incredibly fucking racist, like for example, I just had it happen on Instagram where I posted a Haitian artist talking about Haiti, and he posted something to the effect of, the problem with Haiti is Haitians, and I just responded, but. And then he was like, you can't handle the truth, but. And it just like, bam, that's it, shut them down.
You're absolutely right. And they are bots,
Yeah,
and
even if they're not.
Even if they're not, exactly. That's my next sentence, even if they're not.
Yeah. But I mean, that's like, that's kind of, I think that once you get committed to the content space, which is something that I am in, and I before I forget, I got 2 questions. In fact, I'm not even going to make my point, because it's probably something I've already said on the show. I want you to expand on taste. What is the alternative? And then number 2 that I don't want to forget because it's really important, difference between underground and unsuccessful. Because we're at like 45, and I want to get, and those are 2 important ones.
Really, how much time do we have total?
We can go.
Okay.
There's no time limit, but I also don't. I want to tell you where we're cresting, and I don't want to forget those 2 things because those are something really interesting.
Okay, so the first one, taste. You'll have to remind me. My memory is terrible. You'll have to remind me a second.
Underground versus.
Okay.
Yeah.
The first one of taste. I think the problem with taste is you run into class gatekeeping very quickly. Like very, very quickly.
Mm.
And for me as an artist, it's the most important questions I ask myself is what is the function here for the things that I'm using, right? And I grew up being really into B movies, like just the worst movies that were ever made, things that were not.
Were you a Mystery Science Theater guy?
Yeah, but before that,
you were into
USA Up All Night.
Oh yeah. I brought that up to someone the other day.
I lived and died by USA Up All Night.
That's where I saw fucking Barbarella the first time after I think we were at a Fish concert, and then like we were all like, what is this movie?
Yeah, sure. So there were 2 hosts. I was there for the Rhonda Shear version and Gilbert Gottfried, right?
Yes.
And I grew up with basic cable, and this is all like kind of like puberty era and stuff. And these things really spoke to me because I knew that they were made to be funny, and I knew that they were made to sort of forego all of the concerns of Hollywood. That none of that stuff, like you can see the boom mic, the sync is off, all that stuff. That's part of what made it amazing, right? And and so that sensibility has always stayed with me, and I was always influenced by the kind of beauty of that. I think of that as having a certain beauty, where it's just like it's a very real kind of effort to make something that's fun and engaging without like kind of saying, well, we need a star or we need to have big explosions that look realistic or whatever, right? And so all the trauma movies and all that stuff were really big for me. And when
did they play them on? They weren't too much.
What's that?
They weren't too violent or gory, or they were just campy enough.
Because the violence in it is so unrealistic.
Okay,
like Class of Nukem High was one that I was really into.
That's a good title.
And
it sounds like Battle Royale but campy.
Pretty much. I mean, I won't say it's a good movie, but it's a movie that I liked a lot as a kid.
But also the other part of Up All Night, it's the presentation of the movie with it's kind of like that. I think there's still a horror version that someone does on Shudder. I forget what it's called. I can't think of it right now. But like that whole like, hey, you're watching a movie with Gilbert Gottfried and he's making commentary on it, and it's like, so that is also part of the comfort of that. Like going back to what I was saying about going back to that time period where like TV just kind of lulled you a little bit. You know, it was like comforting, and then it shut off, and there was nothing.
And that all kind of went away. Right, it's very interesting.
No. I mean, USA Up All Night.
But the actual broadcast ended.
USA Up All Night was the last thing on,
and then it was just the like stand by until tomorrow. Absolutely. And also things like American Gladiators. Where it was just kind of like, in some weird way, and almost monster truck rallies have a similar kind of thing where it's like this is the arts. This is theater for like. Your average American, right? You know what I mean? Like this is like Greco-Roman like Olympics for like people in Texas or wherever I lived. Like
where did you live in Texas?
In Dallas.
Okay.
I grew up in Dallas, but for a longer period, I spent time visiting Longview, which is a smaller city, closer to Louisiana.
One of my favorite rappers right now is that Mexican out of Texas. Do you know him?
What's his name?
That Mexican OT.
No, that's his name. Okay. Obviously, I've never heard of him.
Out of Texas, yeah.
Out of Texas. I don't know how...
I didn't even realize...
I don't know how artists can be in Texas. I don't know how they
we did a Who's a First and What's on Second. Yeah. You don't know how they can be in Texas?
I don't know how artists can stay in Texas. It's just, it's a very repressive kind of environment. I mean, maybe people like pushing it back against that. Maybe they like that kind of friction, but for me, I found it exhausting.
Yeah.
The first time I came to California, I was 12, and I was just like, I'm invisible here. Like, I'm moving here. Like, I'm just another person. And I also felt very strongly when I was young that I would rather live in like Mexican culture then, and like whatever the culture is in Texas, because I just felt, I think there's similarities.
Also
between,
Mexican culture?
No, but not in Dallas. Dallas is almost like
Dallas,
Orange County.
fair enough.
Dallas is more like Orange County.
Well, LA is also not very Latino in the elite system.
Yes, absolutely.
It gets wider as you get more success in the art world.
Absolutely. Like the working people of Los Angeles are largely Latino, but when you get up there, it's just a blizzard.
All the people in the files.
The people in the files, exactly.
Are not part of the culture, even though they run the culture of the world.
So taste. Okay, so taste is something you can buy. Taste is something I can buy. Taste is something that people use to kind of profess allegiances, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to kind of upend all of that. And, coming from the world of like hardcore music and punk music and things like that, you don't make things with the intention of being popular or normative or kind of like carrying on tradition. Like you really don't. I mean, at least that was in the early 90s when I started playing in a band. That was not something that people wanted to do. And I was actually kind of shocked when my age group kind of grew up and was like, you know what, we're all just going to copy Springsteen. Because I was like, well, wasn't this the whole point was to not do, but I think that these things go in cycles, and I can see Gen Z now kind of taking on a lot of these more, I don't want to say abrasive, but less kind of reassuring ways of expressing themselves. I do feel like now it has a different feel to it because some of the things that they're doing are like almost 50 years old, where it's like, sort of like you could be wearing a zoot suit or whatever. Like it's a retro, like in my Explore feed, I get a lot of punk stuff and it's indistinguishable from like mid 80s hardcore or whatever. And I'm that's 40 years ago, guys. It's like, what are you doing now? But anyway,
at least I wore big fucking raver pants and that was new.
I was,
I still have a pair.
I wore the big skater pants.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, it's the same shit.
Yeah. I was one of those like normcore punks. I never dressed that punk. I had like crazy hair, but I had dreadlocks and stuff, but I just wore skater clothes,
Yeah.
But I will say that taste comes and goes very quickly. Taste sits on the shelf for like 2 years, maybe 3 years max.
Yeah.
And then it's on to the next thing. And if you attach your way of connecting with the world as an artist to taste, you're gonna at some point you're gonna have a gun to your head that says like reinvent this and follow this, even if it means nothing to you. The taste for fonts that are used in graphic design, the taste that are for cut of pants, all these things change, and you don't have a say in the change. You can join in, but you don't really have a say. Now, on the other hand, if you want to take that taste and use it within the construct of your own practice to make some kind of statement, I think that's totally valid. Mm-hmm. Before Jeff Koons became Jeff Koons, and I feel like he's going to have me killed up. We just keep talking about Jeff. The stuff he made in the 80s was actually kind of interesting.
A lot of people have come through it and shit on Jeff Koons and not died. So.
Okay. But, like some of the stuff he made, like he did a body of work called Luxury and Degradation. And I think that there was a lot of salient ideas in that work, believe it or not. I can't really speak to anything else he's made, but when he used like the Baroque kind of Rococo thing to do Michael Jackson and Bubbles, that had to do with taste, like this kind of like class of people who wants to see Fragonard or whatever.
Fragonard, is that a style of like
that is picture like sort of cherubesque people with like the pink cheeks, like maybe they're on a swing doing kind of like idyllic things. It's just like powdered wig shit.
Okay.
Stuff for the powdered wig class. From the 18th, 19th century. I don't know. I'm not a fan. But bourgeoisie stuff that's sort of like is a mirror to the bourgeoisie that says you're beautiful, you're great, and we love you, and you can do no wrong. And ultimately,
I'm trying to think of what art. I mean, we're not shitting on artists, so we're not going to do that.
I'm not here to bag on anybody. I mean, poor Jeff Koons, but like aside from him, I mean,
he's going to wipe his tears with $1 trillion bills. Okay?
Yeah, no, he's not going to watch this. You know what I mean? He doesn't care, and I feel pretty safe in that he's not going to watch this, but. That ultimately becomes a mirror to the people who are buying it that just says you're great, and this taste sort of this validates that for you.
Yeah.
And for me, and then I think as an artist, I personally would say you get lost in that transaction because you're just here to kind of convey their taste back to them. So that's why I never liked taste. Plus, I always liked the challenge of taking something that is almost tasteful, but adding just enough kind of acid to it or something wrong to where you really have to stop and look at it for a second. And then maybe go, well, do I like this? Why do I like this? Why is this so unnerving to me? And why do I feel that way? I mean, I don't know that we can have these kinds of interactions on social media, but when, I made art, you just put it up in a room, maybe a dozen people go through that room in the course of a show, not counting the opening or whatever. Not a lot of people go through galleries,
Yeah.
And that gives people the space to kind of have that reaction, and I think that, I've always struggled when people on Instagram, they just comment beautiful or whatever. Cause I'm like, I actually made this to like kind of be upsetting, but I guess if you think that's beautiful, that's your taste. It's not my taste. I mean,
So it sounds like the opposite of taste is just tastelessness then.
I don't know that.
Maybe you're not looking for you just try not to conform to taste instead of trying to be counter to it, because then that would make you like a Satanist to a Christian.
Sure.
And then you're trapped in the paradigm.
And the reason why I perked up when you said that is I actually had someone come up to me at an opening a very long time ago and ask me if I was a satanic pedophile in those words. And I was...
Sounds like he knew some, so maybe...
I was really stoned at the time, and it took me by surprise. I didn't respond.
This was a reaction to your work?
Yes, this was a reaction to a painting. I had a painting that I made.
Tasteless.
Well, it was made, it was just made to be something that kind of brought together different types of images in a way that weren't supposed to be brought together. And
was there even a child in the image?
There was a child. Okay, so in the image, you're inside of the viewer, you're inside of a forest looking out into an expanse of green.
Okay.
And walking away from you is a figure who's dressed in like black metal kind of cliches, the spiky arm thing and long hair and the thing. And then there's a child and they're holding hands. And the black metal guy is looking down at the child, and the child is looking ahead into the distance. And the painting's called Let's Go to the Middle. And for me, it was about kind of like, I need to find a middle ground between like my past and a future. Mm-hmm. And in this space of being an artist, I feel kind of like I'm, being born.
Yeah.
Because this is a new space for me. And it's a very big painting, but it's
maybe
painted...
he was inviting you to a party.
There was a woman, and she was definitely not inviting me to a party.
She was like, "Hey, you should come on Saturday."
She wanted me to show her the baby I was going to eat that night. She was really upset. And I left shortly after that. I have trouble engaging with stuff like that because...
well, I mean, it's pretty hostile of a question. I don't think I would engage with it. I'd be like...
There's no right answer.
I would be like, what?
Well, and it's like, I just said... I think from what I remember, I said something about like, I am glad that you're bringing what you see to this.
Yeah, that's fair.
And that might have more to do with you than me,
Yeah, I think that's the answer.
Yeah, and the other part is that it was painted in this kind of like almost like highlights magazine sort of way of like this washy illustration thing for like a children's illustration. But it was a huge like 8-foot painting, right? So I tried to kind of like mix all these things together, and taste wasn't really part of the picture, and I would say I'm not trying to upend taste in the sense of being grotesque or something.
Yeah.
Like there's definitely a lot of performance artists and stuff where they really just want you to be like, okay, you're freaking me out. I'm not really trying to do that so much as like almost like walking right up to the edge of taste and then like denying that. Yeah. In a weird way, right?
It sounds less adversarial. It sounds more nonconformist.
Sure.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm waving a flag of nonconformity, but I would definitely say that given my worldview and the kind of worlds that I've roamed in, that is definitely a thing. And it's also maybe
more
just
of a personal nonconformity
than because I do think that, one of the values that artists bring to being an artist is that you're the only person who's you.
Yeah.
And so once you've kind of bought into taste.
Same thing with music, right?
Yeah, same thing with music.
You're only going to be able to make your own style. Yeah. It's hard to imitate other people.
Right. But there are a lot of rewards for imitating other people. Right. So it's like to bring back the Springsteen thing, like if you're like, I'm going to copy Springsteen, but I'm going to call it indie rock or whatever. And which a lot
Is
of
that
bands,
what you think of Pavement?
No, I actually love Pavement. This is what I think of Arcade Fire. Sorry, I do not like Arcade Fire, and this is what I think of the Killers. I do not like the Killers. But these were two acts where they were definitely like, you know what?
It's definitely retro music. Yeah,
we're going to bring in the Springsteen thing, and we're just going to like pretend like this is part of the underground. And that's fine. Springsteen is completely valid, and I fully respect the guy. I don't listen to his music, but I fully respect the guy.
I like one album, the Born in the USA one. That's it. That's the only one to revisit.
I recently had a conversation with someone about why I don't like Springsteen, and I was like, okay, I grew up in the 80s in Texas as like the one brown guy, and Born in the USA is the sound of someone coming to kick my ass. It's like blaring out of a truck that's trying to run over me on my skateboard. I'm out.
I grew up in Italy, and Born in the USA was my connection to America, and I didn't hear any of the working class. But that guy, anyway, dude.
It's a great song. I'm not gonna like deny the fact it's a great song.
I'm not even talking about that song.
It's a well-written song, and it has.
It's not even the song. It's the whole album. That was like, but it has some weird stuff like, "Hey, little girl, is your daddy home?"
Yeah, there's questionable stuff in a lot of that. I mean, but that's what makes it relatable to the audience, I guess. I don't know. I mean, the guys that I was in a band with as teenagers, we were all very enmeshed in each other's lives because we were in a van touring around and stuff. And
did you all sleep with the same girls and stuff?
No,
you never got like that.
We were like, woke has become this like sort of slur or whatever, right? But it's
just a cringe word.
Like by and large, the people in my band were considered like PC fascists.
That
was like what people called someone like that back then. So we were not like sleeping with people on the road or whatever. Most of us had relationships and stuff, and we were just in it for the music.
Yeah.
But one of the things
a bunch of losers.
Like a bunch of losers, and we were a bunch of losers. But I love all these guys, and we're still friends. But the Springsteen thing always came up with us because we all agreed that we despised the boss, and just that name, the boss, made him like, it's like if you're in punk rock, like the last person you want to look up to is your boss.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that was another world. That was definitely another world. And I can't say that everyone in that band shared the same politics, but that's actually another interesting thing about where we're at now with social media and taste also, is that everybody wants you to display that you have the same political affiliations as them, and wants that kind of reassurance that like, no, you voted for Biden or whatever, like you voted for this, or that person voted for Trump, they're dead, they're canceled. And in those days, it was a big spectrum of conflicting ideas. But the thing
Ross
was,
Perot.
don't know anyone who voted for Ross Perot, but
I do.
That's really funny. And maybe my dad voted for Ross Perot. I don't want to drag him into
I know
this,
someone from that I used to work with that voted for Ross Perot, and when I asked him, I was like, "Who did you vote for?" He was like, "You don't know."
Well, it's Ross Perot. I have no
and when he said that, said that, I was like, "Oh yeah, you did vote for Ross Perot."
But the context for all of this back then was really that people had made their own decisions. And so you respected it. Whether someone said, I'm not going to vote in this election, or I'm going to vote for this candidate or that candidate, you knew that it was their own choice and that they weren't doing it as a performance.
I was in Miami during 2000, so I knew, but my whole life I've known people that voted differently than me. And to me, like that whole thing of just like, we're not talking to people, I'm like, it's so dumb. And
it's really destructive. I mean, I despise Trump with every bone in my body, but there are people in my life, and I won't out them here, who have voted for Trump that I have to maintain a relationship with. And it's a generational thing.
You know what? And you can still love them.
Yeah, and I can still love them. And the main thing is I just won't engage with their worldview, and that's okay.
But for me, and just to finish that thought, for me, it's like I have no control of how they've been propagandized and how they've been programmed.
Yes, absolutely.
And to some degree, we've all had that experience, and we're all victims of that. I'm still trying to deprogram myself constantly.
Sure, me too.
And I'm still catching myself, but it's a crazy.
It's tough because I think we all have like an ideal of how we think the world should exist. Exist. And then we have like the realities of how these things play out, and a lot of the things that I grew up being interested in politically, I know are not viable.
Yeah.
And they're food for thought. At the end of the day, the best we could hope for in this country is some kind of like social market economy that you would get in Europe, right?
Yeah.
Where there's some amount of free market, but there's a heavy amount of regulation, and that there is a real welfare state to take care of people, because we don't have any of that in the United States. We don't have a free market, we don't have a welfare state, and we don't have any regulations, really. And so, you know, all we have really is a ramp to authoritarianism. That's kind of the problem with Democrats. And
well, they're both parties want us to be serfs. You know, that's like that. Yeah. Everything is now seeking rent. Everything is rent-seeking behavior.
So rentier capitalism is kind of where we're at now. And the digital economy, all the Silicon Valley people, they're the ones who brought us this thing. And I don't want to get lost on that road. I think that's pretty self-explanatory to a lot of people now.
Yeah.
And we have to find a way out of it. We do. We really have to find a way out of it. And I think like stuff like universal basic income, I know people who really have friends who think that's really going to like save everybody. And I'm like, absolutely not. Fight that.
That's
your dying breath.
That's a fucking oppressive system.
That is back to feudalism. That is 100% back to feudalism. And we don't want that, because all we're going to be doing is spending right back into the economy that is giving us that money. And you do not want that. And you know what, honestly.
And what can you say publicly if you're getting money from the state? Like where can you criticize foreign policy?
You absolutely can't.
Yeah.
And you become indebted to that system. And the truth is, you know, a lot of people talk about being anti-capitalist online, a lot of artists. And at the end of the day, if you've made something and you've sold it, you've participated in capitalism. It's not the same thing as global capitalism, though the world of private equity and all that stuff. That's what screwed up the art world really at its core, is private equity. You have, like I was saying earlier, these horizontal affiliations that just have to do with the ledger going up forever. And it has nothing to do with the actual thing itself, you know? What was the other thing that you wanted me to say?
Cool. No, I hadn't forgotten. Underground versus unsuccessful. That reminds me of one of my favorite LP lyrics. Motherfucker, you're not a vet, you're just old. About the hip hop world.
Sure. Well, I mean, hip hop has a lot of incredible underground, hugely influential acts that have shaped a lot of that culture, and they're never going to be on the radio. And that's a great example of underground versus unsuccessful. And you mentioned Pavement earlier. So if you take this kind of bullshit talent show version of the art world that we have now, where it's like Simon Cowell sitting on the other end of a table being like, you know, you suck or you're good or whatever. Someone like Steve Malkmus never would have passed the test. Be like,
who's that?
The singer for Pavement.
Oh, okay.
I'd be like, you don't know how to sing. And those things you're playing on guitar, some of them sound like they're kind of off. You're not playing the scale the right way or whatever. But it's like, you know, I don't know anyone in music who's not like kind of like into Pavement on some level.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's like that stuff has defined a lot of American indie. But part of it is the word indie. You know, I think that it is completely sandblasted of meaning at this point, to where people just think, okay, there's a guy in the band with glasses, or that like they've made a choice to like maybe forego the same kind of masculinity complex that like, you know, Limp Bizkit has or whatever. And so now it's indie. But the truth is, indie meant you're working independently. And that means you're not on a major label, and you're not serving the interests of that corporation. All of that got very murky over the tens and the teens, because Sony essentially bought up the rights and the distribution to almost all of the indie label catalogs. And so a label like Matador or something that was at one point in time like an indie label is just part of the system. And, you know, I think even Discord Records, like the Fugazi label, I think that they're distributed by Sony, you know, and a lot of
Prince taught us how moral Sony is.
And, you know, God bless Prince. I mean, he tried to make some points there at the end that really got lost, I think, but you know, where the internet was going to go out of style or whatever. But I actually think that some of what he said is true.
I never heard those things.
Well, I do have a theory about what's going to happen with the internet. And I think that as it becomes more of a tool for surveillance, like we're seeing right now with Pete Hegseth and Anthropic, where he's like, if you don't let us use this for civilian surveillance and for weapons deployment, then we're going to ban you, right?
And Sam Altman was like, I'll suck your
he's
dick.
like, here, where do I sign up? So what you're going to see more and more is that your social media is essentially just your confession booth to the government, right? And as that becomes less and less valuable to the user, people are inevitably going to find other ways to connect. You have to. And I think that really the antidote to what's wrong in the art world, because there's all this stuff now about what's wrong in the art world. And I see all of these like slide carousels where it's just like a block of text, like 10 blocks of text about like someone trying to figure out what's wrong with the art world. And it's very simple. It's private equity. Because when I got into art, LA was this regional, provincial kind of place where none of what was happening here meant jack shit to people who are like investors in Formula One or whatever.
Yeah.
It meant fuck all to these people. And you can go back to that. You just have to be willing to have low numbers and live with that. You know, and the point that I made earlier about talking about like kind of the economics of like being in debt after selling out a show, really the point of me saying that is to message to people that like what you think is at the other end of this rainbow isn't even there in the first place.
Yeah, yeah.
So come up with something else that serves you, that serves the people you know. You may not make as much money. You may not get as many likes. A lot of likes are bots. None of that stuff should be taken at face value.
Oh man, I wish I had fucking money to buy bots. I'm kidding. I would not be able to live with myself.
There was a big story that came out about this guy who, this was in Rolling Stone a couple of weeks ago, about this guy who's going to prison for getting bots to play his music on Spotify and then having Spotify pay him the royalties. And he made like $10 million. And he's being imprisoned for fraud. But how is that any different than Spotify making AI music, collecting all the royalties themselves, and calling it a day? It's the exact same thing. And I just don't really understand that.
It really puts the Napster lawsuits in.
No, Lars was right. You know, Lars was right. I mean, I will go beyond that and say Lars is a great drummer too. Because I know the internet hates Lars's drumming. Lars is one of the most recognizable drummers in all of metal. And he understands how to cut right through a crowd and to fill a stadium with a drum beat that, you know, the guy from Tool is going to like turn up his nose at.
I mean, it sounds like the trick is you just turn the bassist all the way down.
You turn the bassist all the way. That's definitely like part of the trick to making things sound huge. That's very real. But a lot of it is it's 4 on the floor. It's kind of like an AC/DC drum beat where he's just going to. But you know, like there's a quote from Pete Townsend a long time ago where it's like you keep it simple and you bring everyone with you.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's very real. And I don't know what that has to do with visual or contemporary art, but in music, I think that's very real.
It has to do with Napster.
Anyway, Lars was right about Napster. And, you know, I think that a lot of people on the internet like to kind of glom on to these things like the AI is bad thing, where it's like you see a lot of these kind of like illustrators and people online being like, AI is bad, it's theft, it's this and that. And it's like, well, you're complaining about it on a platform that is using your work to make their own AI that they can then sell to advertisers to replace you.
Yeah.
Which is meta, right? You know, and it's like, so like with Spotify, people pick on that loser who owns Spotify. Look, all of these companies are owned by these same kind of people. They're all invested in surveillance technology. They're all invested in military technology, either directly or indirectly, and they're all invested in censorship.
Yeah.
And when it comes...
They all need it.
What's that?
They all need it.
Yeah, and they all need it to survive. And
because otherwise you'll criticize them and then, you know, like, what's it called? There's been like whining from the AI guys who are like, don't call it slop. I'm like, we'll call it whatever the fuck we want.
It's slop. But the thing is, you know, look, as a conceptual artist, I've done things with AI that I don't consider to be slop.
No.
But the thing is I can't put that online. So a lot of the work I make just doesn't go online. Like there's no venue for what I do in that sense, because if I go online with it, people are going to come at me with pitchforks, the satanic pedophile people or whatever. and I could be like, well, I trained this AI on my own work. It's not ripping off anything but me. I did. I feel really reluctant to say this into a microphone.
Well, then don't.
No, but I feel like, you know, I'm here to be candid.
Okay.
You know, and like I did a Turing test was one of the performance pieces. I do some performance art, but it's usually not ever announced as performance art, right? Like I love Andy Kaufman and a lot of my big influences are comedians, or they are people who made movies like the ones we were talking about earlier that are meant to be funny, right? Yeah. Maybe not on the surface, but you laugh.
Like
you
dirty work.
And well, like Chris Farley, I've made a lot of paintings about Chris Farley falling through a coffee table, like a dozen of them, because I feel like as an artist, that's really my job.
Is it referencing the iconic Van Down by the River sketch?
Yes.
Because that's or did he fall through a lot of tables?
He fell through a lot of tables,
Okay.
but he also died falling through his coffee table.
Oh,
and so for
that's
me,
dope.
there's like a real kind of like poetic thing that happened there.
Yeah.
Where his art imitated his life. And I've always felt like a strained relationship to being an artist in a lot of ways. And I've always related to that thing where I have to fall through this coffee table until one day this is real, you know? And anyway, I've done some performance pieces using e-commerce and using social media. And some people have accused me of being kind of duplicitous in that I don't come out and say it. But I'm not going to ruin what I make with over-explanation.
That's a dumb...
I hate that whole thing. And,
yeah.
And so I did a Turing test, which is, the test to tell if you're communicating with a human or a computer. And everybody failed. All of my followers failed. And I felt this immense sense of dread.
So it was a computer or...
Yeah. And I felt this horrible sense of regret. But then I actually had to kind of like regroup and be like, no, this is my work.
Yeah.
And I need to own this. And the people who engaged in this in a positive way were engaging in my own work. This doesn't exist anywhere else except for here with me. And you're only ever going to see this through me. And the only reason a computer was able to make this is because I gave this computer something to work with that nobody else has access to. But in the conversation around AI, everyone's just going to come with their pitchforks and they're going to call me a satanic pedophile or whatever. And, but I don't have the energy to take that on. And so this will just be something I can look back at later. And when we're done, I'll show you a book to give you an example, because I had a feeling it might come up that I talk about like performances, and just to give you a little bit of context. Because I made a book about one of the performances I did in 2019. I did a performance called Instagram 2019. And I did it all with a straight face, all done with a straight face. And there were people in my world that knew what I was doing who were like, are you deceiving people? And I said, absolutely not. Like, this is real. This is real for them and it's real for me. But the meaning behind it comes from a place of conceptual art. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to make a press release about that, because then it turns it into like a stage performance, which this is not. This is a performance that's just integrated into the world. And one of the people that was, kind of told that I talked to about it was like, you do realize you're setting yourself up for this stuff to only make sense down the road. And I was like, yes. And I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
The last time I ever had a gallery come by my studio to look at my work was in 2014. And when they left, they looked over their shoulder and turned to me and said, have fun living for your obituary. And I was just kind of like, go fuck yourself. What do you want me to say?
But that's basically what they said to you.
But, and yeah, that is exactly what they said to me. But in the end, that's what we're all doing, because we're all collecting this kind of narrative about the things we make. And if you work within the time of your existence and within the time of the things you make, that you're gonna run into a situation where in the moment it gets lost.
Yeah.
But when you look back later, people can really understand it. And I think that, with Andy Kaufman, that is exactly how that went down. At the time,
people hated it.
People hated it. They had no idea what they were looking at. And they were like, this guy sucks.
Yeah.
But then 20 years pass, and then it's explained to them, and it's looked at through the lens of everything that has come and gone since. And it's like, okay, I understand. And so I have a lot of work, unfortunately, that falls into that category, but that's okay.
Going back a little bit to the underground versus unsuccessful, do you think your career that you abandoned, how do you feel about that? I mean, obviously it wasn't underground, but was it successful?
I feel like I was playing a game where I was very successful to an elite group of people, right? And to my peers who knew me from college or watched me kind of come up, they would just be like, wow, you're out there killing it or whatever. But in a way, it was its own form of underground, because the elite is not an open door to the world. They don't have this open door to the world. To speak a little more clearly to the underground versus unsuccessful thing, it's like people make choices, artists make choices, and if you make a choice to be in a black metal band or whatever, you can't conceivably think that you're going to chart alongside Beyonce. But a lot of people that I was surrounded by in the art business, their only exposure to music was like Taylor Swift and Beyonce, or like, maybe Eminem or something, but things that are at the very top of the charts. And so for me to make something where I'm like, I'm interested in, Scott Walker and Cornelius or whatever at the time I was interested in. I don't know, but people who are fairly marginal but have a cult following. There was no way for me to convince these people that there's merit there without an audience. Because one of the things I learned really young, that I'm really sort of proud of myself for having this foresight was, when I was coming of age and I was in college, like Nick Drake was kind of brought back from the dead, right?
Yeah.
And he had been
Volkswagen commercial.
Yeah, exactly. The Volkswagen commercial brought him back from the dead. And he had been forgotten for 20 years. But then all of a sudden, everyone was like, this is the best shit ever.
Yeah.
And I learned in that moment, especially from having been in a band myself that had a little bit of success.
You told me before we started recording that people still listen to one of your early bands.
Yeah, I mean, there's a Reddit thread where people were like, "Who is this one band?" Blah blah. And now, like 3 out of the 6 people in the band.
You don't want to
say
the band's name?
We were called Family Values. We were just some kids making punk. We've been accused of being a pop punk band, but generationally, that wasn't really. We were a part of a kind of a crust punk hardcore scene, but we wrote songs. So that was kind of called melodic hardcore at the time, and then eventually you get the big explosion of all the Green Day but the sort of Sum 41 and all stuff came way later. These people are much younger than me.
Well, I would say that you can't even really call, would you call NoFX punk, pop punk?
No.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
Yeah, so it's right. Sonically, but the content is different.
The content is different.
I mean, the Decline is still one of the fucking best.
That's the best thing they made.
Yeah.
And my sister was roommates with Eric Melvin back in the early 90s, the guy with the dreads and NoFX.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of exposure to them, and I don't think of them as pop punk at all.
No, that's what I'm saying.
I saw Green Day play to 80 people, and that when it first started out was you didn't call it pop punk. You were just like, wow, these guys can actually write songs.
Yeah.
And then it became this
that
kind
are
of
longer
thing.
than a minute.
Yeah, right. I forgot what it was. My point was. Oh yes, so I had this observation that. When you go into the world and do your thing, and if you're lucky enough to find a lane to kind of drive in for a minute, you'll maybe get 3-5 years of exposure where people are like, oh, this is new and interesting to me, or this is of the times, this is of the zeitgeist, and we can attach ourselves to it. But invariably, people move on.
Yeah.
And, Taylor Swift is an exception, but that's an exception.
MIA made that point. MIA said that when she broke, she was like, okay, the Beatles had 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And that's going to be my spin.
And that's it. And right.
Yeah.
And so I made a decision early on that I was always going to work as though my little, 4 or 5 years had already happened. Okay. And that everything that I do is for the long game. It's for the long run. And that none of it is meant to be I'm going to kill it in media today, and I'm going to be on the cover of every magazine, and I'm going to be the sign of the times or any of that. It was always I'm going to act as though my time is already come and gone. And I used, and for myself, just since I was in a band that was on a label and we were dropping a label, that was my way of contextualizing that for myself and being age 15 to 18, that was it for me.
Yeah.
And now I'm free to just be a legacy artist like Nick Drake, to go back to that. Because what they would call the Nick Drake effect on NPR or whatever in those days, where it's oh, you'll be discovered 20 years later. It's I'm not even counting on that.
Yeah.
It's just the idea that you make your statement and then you got to move on, because life keeps happening. Your interests will change. Audiences will change. Your audience might grow up. The conditions of the marketplace can change. With art, the conditions of contemporary art change so much as to be completely unrecognizable to me. And I was okay, I signed up for this one thing, but I didn't sign up for this other thing.
Yeah.
And like I said, I have a daily practice of making art. I've always kept it. I painted this morning before I had breakfast. I mean, I just don't share this stuff on social media. And as long as that's the construct that everyone's bound to, I'm outside of that construct.
Did you, where did you show those 2 shows in 2024?
So I had an injury. It was just a freak accident in 2022 at the very end of the year. And I was kind of homebound for a while, and I needed something to do. And so I started painting again. And what I did was and I recommend this to anyone watching this who wants to know how to kind of get a show.
Mm-hmm.
I did not put any of it online. I put together a big checklist and maybe a little PDF, and I sent it to, maybe the 15 people I still talk to from the art world, and just other artists, and maybe a couple art advisors, but I didn't send it to any galleries, not with the intention of showing. I sent it to one gallerist I used to work with that I didn't work with anymore, but just to be I'm making stuff. And I just wanted people to see it. And what happened was some of the artists responded and offered me shows. So an artist who lives in North Carolina, Luke Whitlatch, is someone that I knew from Otis back in the 90s. And we'd shared a studio in the past when he lived in LA and stuff, but he's been gone for a while now. He was like, look, I have a show coming up, but what do you think about doing a 2-person show? I really like this work and I think it would look good. And I was like, I hadn't planned on that, but yeah, 100% I'll do it. And then the other one was Kristen and Josh, who run Serious Topics over in Inglewood. And they are artists that I respect immensely and I've known for a while. And I did not expect them to respond with, do you want to do a show? But that's what they said. And I actually was like, well, I just committed all the work that I sent you to this show in Asheville. And they were like, what if we give you some canvases and you just make us a couple more paintings? And I was like, how can I say no to that?
Yeah.
And those are the kind of people that you really want to be connected with. Like they literally just gave me 4 canvases and I turned them around with 4 paintings. And, none of this stuff really sold. I sold a couple of things in Asheville to someone who I already knew. I was happy to do those shows, but it's very completely outside the distribution network of what I was doing before, which was with mega galleries. Virtually all the rosters at some of the galleries that I showed with are extremely famous people now. I'm not going to name names, but it's like all of them are people that everyone's heard of.
Yeah.
For better or worse.
You said something, we are at like an hour and 27, and I feel like I'm like draining you. Like now I'm the energy vampire and I'm like, just keep giving me more.
No, it's fine. I feel like I'm just talking at you. So
no, dude, dude. In no way is that like if you don't see me absorbing this stuff, there's just so much that, okay. You said something, I think this will probably be the last question.
Okay.
Unless there's something that you forgot, and I'll give you a chance to say that. That's really the last question.
Okay.
But you said something about the audience. And this is more about me kind of like seeing if you agree with something I feel. but the audience mattering. I feel like there is something interesting that happens where, and this is maybe more because my experience is obviously not from your world, but it's tied to like school. My experience in art school was not great.
Where'd you go to art school?
Florida International University. I just went back and like visited the school and saw one of my friends and I was like, dude, I had a really hard time in school. It's just like, oh, I didn't even know. I was like, kept it together.
Yeah.
But what's it called? Like, yeah, like I feel like there is a huge community of people that go to the art school, learn how to have these practices, and then they become parts of communities, but they really only show to each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to me, we're in an interesting place in the conversation where you kind of like, I don't know if resent or hate, it just wasn't for you.
It wasn't for me. That's the thing. I don't hate anything.
Yeah. Okay.
I had to make a judgment call for my own sanity.
But I'm saying like, do you feel like playing at that level is maybe, because you also talked about your complications with it, but at the same time, like I feel like I'm not necessarily trying to say that things are irrelevant, but I feel like it can be easy to end up in a community that is tight knit, that is maybe irrelevant.
So I definitely have opinions about that. And I think that Instagram is a great example of getting into this thing where you keep showing the same people, your followers, the same work over and over and over again. The same people like it over and over and over again. And the promise of all of that was supposed to be that we're going to be able to show our work to everyone around the world. But the algorithm will only show it to whoever it shows it to.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can almost predict if I put up a painting or a watercolor or something, I can almost predict before I hit post how many likes it's going to get and who those people are going to be.
Yeah.
Because it's always the same people.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so
even with the podcast,
it's a very interesting question because I am very much in favor of keeping your community alive with the people you know that you went to school with, or the people that you might know since you've met school, or people who live around Lincoln Heights here, or whatever like your community is kind of defined by. But there has to be there doesn't have to be, but there ought to be a way that each one of you does a small part to open the door, to bring in other people, to bring in that one collector they met, or to like get in this one other publication and like, you know, actually mention your friends, because everybody is so protective and everyone is so gatekeepy.
Yeah, yeah.
And everyone is like, you know, they're all like just thinking they're gonna be the person that licks the most crumbs off the palace floor, and you're not.
Yeah.
You know, and the best thing you can do is build some kind of community that allows other people in. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with like self-help graphics. That was an institution in LA for a long time. I don't know that they're still around, but there was a guy when I went to school who was super invested in that. And that is the kind of thing that was centered around a community. And it grew and it had more people and it eventually took on more of a life. And someone I went to college with, Mario Ibarra, he has
Junior, yeah.
Yeah, Junior. I gotta make sure I get that in.
No, I was just like, why do I fucking know that name? And then I had to complete it.
Well, so he has Slanguage, right? And that's, I think, down in Wilmington, which is like near where my parents live. And that he's completely invested in that world down there. And I can probably, I mean, I've never been down there, but I can probably guess that he's not dealing with the same people from one year to the next. That, you know, you have turnover and you bring people in, other people leave to go on with their lives, new people come in. But I feel like those two things are really good examples of ways to like be a part of something that has what I was saying earlier, like a vertical integration into your life, but also has room for other people. I think, you know, one of the things I mentioned earlier was private equity, right? And I think that right now, something that a lot of artists can do to really like try to take back the art world is make things that private equity don't have any interest in. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're locked in this little cloister, but that there's another horizontality that exists below them. Like,
yeah.
I used to be friends with a lot of, you know, mega dealers, or a handful of them. And I remember having a conversation with one of them once when I was really just like, I can't do this anymore. Like, my brain hurts. I don't like any of the people that I'm around and all this stuff. And he was like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, if I could have it my way, I would do kind of what we did in the punk touring days, which is tour, but never play any of the main economic centers. Because those are controlled by like ticketing companies and things like that. So you can do a tour of, you know, country artists do this stuff too, where they'll play like 40 dates within just like the South or whatever.
Yeah,
they're playing these fairly small cities. But I told him I want to show in secondary, not secondary, but like, you know, sort of second tier cities all over the country so that I can engage with other people who are not kind of lost in this sort of Epstein class.
Yeah.
And he was like, that's a terrible idea. Don't ever do that. But the fact that people think that that's a terrible idea, in my mind, says do that.
Yeah.
You know, and that's one of the reasons I was more than excited to take this show in Asheville. I don't have any connection to Asheville, but I would love for people in Asheville to have some exposure to my work because it's coming from a different place, but it's also speaking to people who just kind of like live here and work here. And I think that, you know, an artist whose work I really like is a photographer, Stacy Kranitz. And I don't know anything about this person, but her work is based in this kind of Appalachian world that she comes out of. At least that's what I take away from it. But the work goes on and goes out into the world in these other places and connects with these other things. And, you know, to just kind of sum up with private equity, okay, I had this idea of like, you know, I knew that the private equity thing was going to come up. And I was like, is there an example? And it's maybe not a good example, but just try to bear with me here. I'll try and keep it short so we can end this. Okay.
Oh, I just thought of another question. You're fucked.
Oh, no. Okay, no, it's good. Keep it coming. Okay, so for private equity, right? We all know what TGI Fridays is, right? It's a horrible restaurant, this kind of fast food thing where they take stuff out of a freezer, dump it in a fryer. They have them in every airport from fucking Denver to Dubai, right? And nobody wants to eat at a TGI Fridays, but everyone knows what it is. And if you're captive in, you know, a airport terminal, you'll get something to eat there or a beer there or whatever, right? Once upon a time, TGI Fridays was a restaurant in Memphis back in the 70s where the coolest avant-garde hipsters or whatever, however you want to characterize that, the artists and the musicians at the time, they all hung out there. And that was like their spot. That was like their mecca. And that version of TGI Fridays would never be of interest to the kind of people who sponsor Formula One racing or horse racing or whatever. But they're all more than happy to like invest in the version that's in, the Atlanta airport or whatever, right? And these things are completely exclusive from each other, but they kind of look the same on the outside. One of my favorite artists is William Eggleston. He hung out at TGI Fridays in Memphis back in the day.
Oh, that's fucking
He
awesome.
documented
He's
the whole
one of my
scene.
favorite.
He documented the whole scene. Look it up. I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
if you know Big Star, but Alex Chilton hung out there and other musicians. And you have to assume that the music scene in Athens probably went through there. And all kinds of people from that region went through there. And that was like the place to go and the place to be. And you definitely want to find yourself making communities that are the TGI Fridays in Memphis, not the one at some fucking airport. And there's a big difference. And the one in Memphis still had cultural relevance. It still had currency. It had reach. I'm talking about it here 50 years later in a different state, like in California. And it's just about playing to the people that are your people, and making sure that everybody gets out too and does other stuff. Because William Eggleston, taking pictures of this stuff, but he's showing it in museums. He's showing it in galleries. And he's taking it out and putting it out into the world. And I still think that it would be great to see artists who just try and show in all cities that are not New York, LA, or Miami.
Yeah.
San Francisco, Portland, Chicago. There's so many other cities you can show in.
Did you know I'm from Miami?
You mentioned that.
Okay.
Yes.
I did mention when you talked about Basel.
Yeah, no, but because of Art Basel, Miami has become kind of like one of these big art centers, right? Where it's like, I don't really know, you would just be another drop in the bucket. Whereas, you might be the only, like when my band would play in a place like Amarillo, it would be, shoulder to shoulder, standing room only, crazy mosh pit, like people having the time of their life because there's no other game in town. And they're actually very honored that you would bring your thing from the big city that you live in to their city. When we would play in Dallas, you get 15, 20 people show up and they're all cynical, standing there like this, kind of being like, oh, it's you guys again.
Yeah.
And when we played in LA, it was even worse than that.
Yeah, Miami, in terms of music, since it's so far at the end of the peninsula, whenever, like, I just remember Adam Ant came one year when I was here, and I was like, Jesus Christ, everyone's freaking out.
Sure. I mean,
because they don't come down there.
Because nobody comes.
And I remember Def Jux used to go down there, so I would watch, I would see LP before he became part of, what did the Def Jux? No, Run the Jewels.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. But okay, so my last question, I guess, because you mentioned art advisors and how you sent out your stuff to art advisors.
Yes.
I have a friend who's doing pretty well as an art advisor, and I reached out to her. She liked Chomsky as a linguist, and I was like, I hit her up, and I was like, oof, and she was like, oof, but she was
Epstein
like,
list.
Yeah, Epstein list, yeah. Oh, I figured everybody knows what a disgraced liar that guy is, but it's going to be interesting because I've never read Manufacturing Consent, and now I really want to read it.
I read it back in the day. He's manufactured his own consent.
Well, yeah, there's a weird pun there. About how you can't, if they're too young, you can't manufacture.
Right. No, he's manufacturing consent with a minor. Right.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Which is impossible.
Oh my God.
But anyway,
yes, no, it's not possible. It's not available.
So wow. So my friend, I'm going to be doing a studio visit with her.
Art advisor.
Art advisor. She's really good at this stuff and all of that. But like from the perspective of like talking to that, like what, now, like, not like what can she do for me, but like what are the benefits of, like, what can art advisors do for artists that,
sure.
Because my understanding is their relationship is usually gallery and collector. But she does studio visits. I've never asked her what she gets out of those studio visits with artists, but like how does that relationship work between an advisor and an artist?
Art advisors operate in a lot of different tiers of the art economy. And I will say, that really in my experience, they're kind of unsung heroes. They can place your work in major collections without a gallery being involved.
Oh, wow.
And they can bring your work in front of other people that they deal with because they deal with everybody. A lot of them will deal with major institutions and small collectors, and they'll deal with private, corporate collections. And some of them deal with small galleries and with big galleries and with museums. I don't know if I already said that, but they kind of have their kind of reach goes all over. And I've never sold anything directly through art advisors, but I have had art advisors come to my studio and buy things, but also recommend me to other people for things. And in my experience, art advisors have there's less sort of like sulfur in the air.
All right, we're ended there. That's the joke. But no, okay, that's really helpful. Thank you so much, dude. Like,
Thanks for having me.
I usually don't go an hour and 42 minutes, but you had so much that I didn't know.
I'm sorry that it took me a year to come around.
Oh, no. I it was also my fault because I was like, I just didn't follow up because sometimes I throw out so many fucking invites and they like just fall.
Sure, yeah.
But it was never like you responded and I was like, and you were like, it wasn't wishy-washy, but I was like, it didn't seem like you were like, yeah, let's fucking do it.
That's the thing. I was like, look, I still make art. I have a lot of opinions. I have a lot of experience. Maybe some of this has value. I should just hit this guy up and see if he still wants to talk.
Absolutely. No, this was great. And this was this was even better than I anticipated.
Well, thank you.
That's why I stayed the fuck out of the way. That's my job. What can we promote for you? You have an Instagram. Another question could have been, but okay, don't answer because it'll take too long.
No, it's okay.
It could have been like, how do you interact with Instagram?
Okay, well, so I have a private Instagram, but I say yes to anyone who appears to be a normal person who's not a bot. You can follow me. Since I work for a living, I don't want that to be something that coworkers can just do a drive-by on really quick. I don't really need that in my life. But my Instagram has nothing that's actually private on there. It is private, but if you want to follow
artwork?
me... yes, it's almost exclusively artwork or music. And my music projects are One Finger Riot and Ex Detectives. And you're more than welcome to look those things up. One last thing I would say that maybe could be helpful to other artists is somewhere a little less than a year ago, I just kind of got a wild hair to be like, I want to learn SEO. And so I made a website for my record label and I made a website for my art practice. But my art practice website is a little bit more of a retrospective. It's not like, here's what I'm making today. I get a lot of stuff that goes to auction and a lot of these requests to like authenticate work. And I was like, I'll just make this easy and I'll make a website. They don't have to contact me.
Yeah.
And so what I learned was that just by having good SEO and being findable, my website gets insane traffic. And even though I don't have a lot of followers on Instagram, I don't post, I don't really make content. So I do occasionally put stuff up there, but it's pretty infrequent. Most artists, I try to follow them back. Even if I don't really know anything about you, I don't always have time to look to see who's following me. But, if I can tell that you're an artist, I'll just try to follow you back because I'm not here to be cooler than you and have the most followers. You're welcome to follow me at Faris McReynolds, farismcreynolds.com, and postplanetary.com is my record label. And where I'm at now, my record label gets more traffic than my art, which is very cool for me. I've written hundreds of songs. A huge part of my practice is writing lyrics and arranging music, and I take the lyrics that I write very seriously and the songs that I write very seriously. And to me, I don't make a distinction or a hierarchical decision between like what matters more simply because, like a royal will pay for it. Music's all free. It's all out there. I have links to everything. And I'm on the internet.
Cool, man.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, this was great. I mean, I think people are really going to dig this. And this is probably one that they're going to come back to and listen to. Because you know...
Jeff Koons, he'll watch it over and over and over again.
Just stabbing his own leg. No, and I didn't even have to work in the Epstein files. You just did it organically.
Well, it does me the favor of saving me having to explain the real cultural divide that the artists are up against.
Yeah. No, thank God they came out. It also makes me like the least crazy person because for a long time I've been kind of on this tip where I'm like, I mean, I didn't think it like honestly my mom listens to me now.
Okay, I thought one last thing I would like to say.
Yeah.
Because I think that this gets a really bad rap on the internet. Galleries do a 50-50 split and it is worth it.
Yeah.
It is worth it. It is worth it because there's so much involved in sales. There's a huge outpouring of cost involved in sales. But there's also the risks you run. If you try to sell your own work on Etsy and someone has a problem with it and they do some kind of chargeback or a refund, like you can really screw up your entire life if you have to then refund 20 grand for something that has maybe been damaged in shipping or whatever. The role that galleries play is extremely important. And I think that a lot of gallerists, their heart is in the right place, but the boot of Art Basel is on their neck.
Yeah.
And until people find a way out of that, we're going to be kind of like at this impasse.
Yeah. The fair stuff is great for me though, because I just had Felix Art Fair just came by.
Right.
Tripled my downloads.
That's incredible.
I was like, fuck yeah. I didn't even do any extra promotion. I was like, oh man, that's awesome. That was like
great.
That was an important moment for me that got me in the feels. And if you guys enjoyed this conversation, I really appreciate it if you guys would help us put this into the algorithm. Like, subscribe, comment, say something nasty about Jeff Koons.
Or me. I don't care. I can take it.
Or defend Jeff Koons.
Defend Jeff Koons. I mean, there will be a Jeff Koons bot for sure.
There will be. And then if you really want to help us out monetarily, it really does make a difference. I talked to somebody recently that puts way more money of their own money out of pocket into running a gallery, and now I feel like a bitch.
It's tough. It's tough.
And I was like, "You're not even a 501c," and he's like, "I don't know, man. It's just easier." And he's been going for years. Yeah. I won't get into who it was.
Sure.
But that helps us out a lot. $5 a month gets you early access, and yeah, I fucked up this last week. I apologize, but for the future, it's still pretty consistently coming out early. There was a holiday, and then I released the episode too early, and then I was like, "Oh fuck!" And I deleted it, and then when it should have come out, I never put it out. I should have just left it up on the holiday, but yeah, and it's patreon.com/what's-my-thesis. Special thanks. I don't have the list with me, but I'm going to try to do it off the top of the dome. Special thanks to Tony Irons, M. Trishkovsky, Nicolo, Amir Zaki, Jackie Castillo, Hiroshi Clark, and Ryan, and I got all of them. That's how much I appreciate it.
Thanks, Nick, for recommending me to come on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Nick. I haven't seen him in a while. He's like kind of far now. But I definitely
see his posts.
Well, I'm trying to get Domino's games going, so maybe I'll play against you and him. I brought back a set of Cuban dominoes that I'll show you. Yeah, we'll be back next week with another guest and another topic that may or may not be art related. Sorry for the long episode, but I didn't want to stop him. He had so much to say.
Thanks for giving me the platform.
No, thank you, Faris. This is really, really, I think this is going to be a helpful one for people, especially, because no one ever talks about getting burnt out, and it's totally reasonable and it's totally understandable, especially when you're dealing with some of the stuff that you mentioned, when you're dealing with the EPSTOs.
Well, sure. And as times change, because the conditions around your career can change very quickly and you don't have any control over that. And it's okay to just be like, I can't do this.
Yeah. But you're still painting, which is the important thing.
Yeah. I've never stopped making art. I don't post it online much, but yeah.
Cool. If I said it already, I'll say it again. We'll be back next week with another guest and another topic that may or may not be art related.